the show come into? When does the Netflix show come into the picture?
So COVID hit, like February of
2020, early 2020, I think, right? Yeah, early 2020, like March. I know. My calendar is off. I have these last 2 years have been
like,
completely awash. Yeah, I don't. I think that's
2020.
Yeah.
That was it. February 2020. I think I got furloughed March like 18th, 2020. So I mean, I'm at home just waiting for COVID to be over. What we all thought, right? So I get like a DM on LinkedIn one day, and it's like, "Hey, I saw your profile. Da, da, da. I have this show concept. Do you have time where I can explain it to you more?" I looked at this DM. I'm like, well, no, I got the DM on Instagram, but you know how LinkedIn notifies you when people look at your profile.
Yeah.
So I saw the guy had looked at my LinkedIn profile, and I saw that it was the same guy in the Instagram. So I was like, okay,
it's a lot of effort. Yeah,
like,
are they scamming me for this? Like,
right? I'm like 2 places. I'm like, and back then it was like people weren't really going on your LinkedIn unless it was really professional. So it's kind of okay. So I was like, sure. So he calls me. He gives me this whole spiel. They tell you this really famous chef. They don't tell you your name or anything. So I was like, okay, why not? I'm sitting here doing nothing. Why would I not try this? So they send you like this application. You have to fill out the application. They ask, and then they're like, okay, we have to set up a Zoom meeting with you and like a producer or somebody. So they do that. They ask you all the questions and stuff. And I'm just going through the motions because I mean, it's nothing else to do. Let's see what happens. I think it gets to be like, it's like June.
Oh, wow. It took that long to go from when he messaged you to when?
It was like a bunch of little stuff in between. But I think the end of June, they messaged me. It's like, okay, well, they decided they need to get another video of you making like they gave us 3 different type of desserts or whatever, 3 different things. And I'm like, okay. In my mind, I'm like, it's the summer in Chicago. I don't live in a house with, circulated air. I have like window units. And I don't have access to my professional kitchen, which most of my tools are in. And they're asking me to do this. I don't have access to the suppliers to get the good chocolate. So I'm like, I have to go to the grocery store and see what I can figure out. I mean, I do it. I make the videos. When I'm making the videos, I'm like, my sister came in town. It was like beginning of July by now because I had to make a deadline. And I'm like, can you record me doing this stuff? And it's like the worst thing ever. I'm like, this has got to be horrible. I'm like, they're never going to pick me from this or whatever. But I just did it. I went through the motions. I was like, okay. So fast forward, I decided to move back to Louisiana. I think the week I got here, they contacted me. Hey, we need you to do a small chocolate showpiece and some macaroons. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, I don't have a kitchen. I don't have supplies. So I called that teacher that I couldn't stand in culinary school. And I'm like, hey, chef. I'm like, is there any chance?
How's it going? I missed you.
Well, me and her always message randomly, but whatever. So I told her, I was like, hey, I need to access the kitchen and stuff. I got to do this. So I told her, I was like, I'm applying for this show. They need this video. Da, da, da. She was like, yeah, sure. She was over the pastry program at the University in New Orleans. So I was like, she was like, yeah. I was like, oh my God. This lady, I couldn't stand this lady in school, but she is coming through for me.
Right.
So I was like, so I went and did that or whatever. I made like a little, what did I make? I made like this little stand and I put like an egg on top of it. It was like, I have the videos, they're horrible. But yeah, so I had to like edit it to make it short down to a certain amount of time and stuff. And I sent it off and I was like,
all right. Whatever.
I doubt I get picked from that. But yeah, so I mean, that's July. I ended up moving to like San Antonio because I thought I wanted to be in San Antonio for a while. And it was like, that was in September. I didn't get the call for the show until like, I think the last week of September. I was like driving from my best friend's house, and then my phone rang, and I was like, I really don't like to answer weird numbers.
Tyricia, I would love to have you on the show. You're incredible.
Well, it wasn't him. It was the producer. I wish it. I mean, if it would have been him, I'm like, oh my god,
no. Pull over.
But yeah. So the producer called. He was like, "Hey, Tyricia." I'm like, "Hey, you know." He's like, "I just call and let you know that you've been chosen to be on the show." I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Yeah." He was like excited. I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" I was like, "Is this a joke?"
Right.
I want to be like, "How do I know this is you?" Like, how do I know someone is not playing on my top or whatever like that? So I mean, that happens, and I'm like, and it was like, so I got laid off or let go from the Marriott on like September 20 something. It was literally the day after they called me and told me that I had lost they told you, you know, your position has been eliminated, you know, due to COVID and stuff like that. The day after is when I got the call for the show.
Wow.
I was like, this is meant.
What a roller coaster. Yeah, like you just.
Well, because I knew that it was coming. I knew like it was coming. I was like, this is, because you saw it happening everywhere else. And I was like, okay, I'm going to lose my job eventually. So I had started looking and applying wherever, you know, the few places that were hiring. So when it happened, it was so real. And I was like, oh, shit. I'm like, what now? Which when I moved to San Antonio, my mindset was start your own business, build a clientele, and do that. That's where I was. But knowing I still had my job in Chicago was still a comfort zone. So to get that umbilical cord cut, it was like, uh-oh. So, and then to get that call the next day, I'm like, oh my God, like what is freaking happening? I was like, it was just like, I'm pretty sure I cried. I was just like, oh my God, I was so confused. I mean, not that this was like a job or anything, but it was still opportunity.
Of course.
And it was exposure.